All right, I'd like to call to order the City Council meeting. It's for May 12, 2026. The time is now 7 o'clock p.m. We have a special guest here tonight that is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Her name is Annabelle Middleton. Councilmember Romy, I know she's done some work with Satellite High School. She's got a project that she's doing. And
she is fantastic, and she runs the Club America at Satellite High School, but she's an Indian Harbor Beach resident. And if you need a new flag, you can find them on Facebook, and they will get you a new flag at no charge. And if you've never had a flag, it's a great opportunity to get one. So thanks for coming tonight, Annabelle.
Okay, item number 3 is roll call.
Mayor Scott Nickel.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Adam Dyer.
Here.
Councilmember Susan Romy.
Here.
Councilmember David Nutt.
Here.
Councilmember Neil Yorio.
Here.
Also in attendance, City Manager John W. Coffey and City Attorney Carl Bone.
Okay, thank you. We can skip item number 4 since we're all here. Item number 5 is additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda, if any. I want to float something by my fellow council members here. I know for the boat trailer parking item, at the P&Z board meeting, there was a bit of confusion as it relates to the vote that was taken that evening. So I want to, again, float to the council the possibility of pushing it back to P&Z to get call it a proper vote, if you will. And then we would hear it again after that P&Z meeting. The next meeting is in early June? Early June, so it'd be the council meeting following that meeting. So I want to put that out there, and if y'all are interested in doing that, if you think it's appropriate, then we can certainly discuss it and entertain a motion to do so. I don't know what you all think. Deputy Mayor Dyer?
I think there's personally there's some language in there that I think would need to be addressed even before it goes back to the P&Z board. That would be my input. So.
Councilmember Romy?
I think that's a great idea, but we do have a lot of people that came out to speak about it. So I'd probably go forward with discussing it tonight.
Okay. Councilmember Yoria?
I concur with Deputy Mayor Dyer's suggestion. There is some language, I believe, in the existing ordinance amendment that needs further review, and so I would be in favor of postponing it.
Councilmember Nutt?
There was some inaccuracy in the voting that happened when they already had a quorum in the P&Z, so I agree with you. We need to push it off. Okay. Get a proper vote with all 5 members attending.
Okay. Can that be consensus, or do we need a motion for that? Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we push this ordinance until the P&Z is able to convene in June to vote on this. Is that sufficient?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Nutt, second by Councilmember Yorio. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Okay, so motion passes 3-2. And I'm sorry for those folks that showed up to talk about the boat and trailer parking, but the thought came to me that, you know, we want to get through this right. We don't want there to be any controversy when it's all said and done, whether it's voted for or against, one way or the other. So that's where we are. So it'll be the first meeting after the P&Z meeting in June is when we will reconvene.
I think we should encourage the same group of people here to go to the P&Z meeting.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, my understanding was that there was not many in attendance there.
Yeah, I highly encourage you all to go to the P and Z board meeting, for sure.
Yeah.
I think I stated on the record that, you know, I fully respect the P and Z board, especially when it comes to matters of ordinances. And I listen to their recommendations fairly strongly and take them into consideration, for sure. So I would encourage you all to show up to the next P and Z meeting, voice your opinions.
Mayor, can I ask a question of the attorney? Carl, if we were to change some language in it tonight, just hypothetically, if we were to make some changes in the language of the ordinance, wouldn't it still have to go in front of the P and Z board afterwards?
If you're going to move forward on the ordinance, do the first reading tonight, P and Z's over, they're done. It wouldn't necessarily.
That's even with doing editing.
Yes, sir, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Now, I'm not saying it has to go back. You can do whatever you want to do, but it doesn't have to go back.
Correct.
So we can effectively edit at our next meeting after that P and Z meeting. I mean, it'll be
Absolutely.
first reading, so we can
Right.
certainly make changes. At that time.
Absolutely, and if after that first reading, the council think that this is a substantive, a major revision, you have the prerogative to send it back down and let them view it again. You know, at some point, the can has to stop getting kicked down the road. Okay?
I agree. That's what I
Understand?
was trying to get
Oh,
at.
we definitely want to get this resolved. I think we can all agree on that. But it seems appropriate given under the circumstances. So. All right, item number 6 is presentations, proclamations, and introductions. Item A is Memorial Day proclamation. Nikki, is there anyone here to receive that or not?
Mayor, I'd like to make a suggestion that anybody that may be a veteran that's in the audience that would accept this proclamation, or anybody that's on the council, such as Deputy Mayor and or myself, or even those who served overseas, like the city manager. So if there's anybody in the audience, I would prefer, if there's a veteran out here that would like to accept this, come on up.
See an army shirt.
You smile for the
Do it
camera?
as is, read it
Stand
first.
right
You
there.
want me to read it first?
Please read it.
Okay, let me read it first, and then I'll present it to you, okay? Okay. So whereas Memorial Day, originally known as Decoration Day, was first widely observed on May 30th, 1868, to commemorate the sacrifices of Civil War soldiers, and has since evolved to honor all men and women who have died in military service to the United States of America. Whereas each year on Memorial Day, our nation pauses to remember with solemn pride the heroic service and ultimate sacrifice of those who gave their lives to preserve the freedoms and values we hold dear. And whereas the United States Congress and the National Monument of Remembrance Act of 2000 encourages all Americans to pause at 3 p.m. local time on Memorial Day to reflect the sacrifices made by our fallen heroes. And whereas the city of Indian Harbor Beach recognizes the courage, dedication, and selflessness of all members of the United States Armed Forces who made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of our nation. And whereas it is fitting and proper that all citizens of Indian Harbor Beach come together in unity and gratitude to remember and honor these brave men and women. And whereas the city of Indian Harbor Beach encourages all residents to display the United States flag, attend local ceremonies, and reflect on the price of our freedoms on this day of remembrance. Now therefore, the City Council of the City of Indian Harbor Beach does hereby proclaim Monday, May 25th, 2026 as Memorial Day in the City of Indian Harbor Beach, and calls upon all citizens to observe this day with reverence, respect, and gratitude for those who gave their lives in service to our great nation.
Yeah. You got all of us or just the veterans?
Okay, we're being summoned.
Not leave me here alone.
There you go. That makes it good.
I'm getting the hell out of this picture.
Okay, next is item number 7, which is approval of minutes. First, we have item 7A, which is regular city council meeting minutes of April 28, 2026. Does anyone have any comments or concerns? Hearing none, I'll sign those into the record. And then 7B is fiscal year 27 FM and CIP budget meeting. That's April 28, 2026. Any comments?
No, sir.
Sign those into the record. Item number 8, city manager's report. City Manager Coffey.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, council members, residents gathered here and at home. A few informational items. The South Patrick Banana River Drive traffic shift update. Due to delays in the contractor receiving materials, the temporary traffic pattern has been postponed by several weeks. So when we have more information of the time of the implementation, we will publicize that. Employee insurance broker presentation request in response to Councilmember Nutt's request at the budget workshop. Mr. Rubeski of Intercoastal Insurance is scheduled to speak to the council at the June 23rd meeting. We have a 1976 time capsule, if you're not aware of it, outside our fire department. The city will host a short ceremony on Friday, July 3rd, starting at 9 o'clock to recognize those who were there in 1976, open the time capsule, and honor current and former elected officials. Coffee, bottled water, and donuts will be provided. The public is encouraged to attend, but parking's extremely limited. We are working to secure temporary parking rights in nearby parking lots. The city's America 250 golf cart parade and celebration. This says July 9th. Its working date right now is July 23rd. My apologies for not correcting that. More information will be provided in future meetings. A lot of movement on the Algonquin Sports Complex. The playing fields and ball court basement is scheduled to be installed soon. The ball court, specifically tennis and pickleball, has been installed. There will be a lot of dump trucks with rock coming in soon. We put door hangers on the homes on North Osceola and Wemico to notify the residents of the temporary uptick in traffic. The FP&L conduit relocation issues have been resolved. The northern relocation for power to the tower is all buttoned up. That was outside the scope of the contract, so I signed a PO for approximately $26,000 of FP&L costs. There will be additional costs for the contractor to install the conduit. That cost proposal is pending. The southern FP&L conduit installation, which is part of the contract, appears resolved. FP&L, just before the meeting, emailed me the cost proposal that I will forward to the vendor to take care of, and the contractor will be picking up later this week the conduit and associated materials for both routes. Once the contractor has the conduit in the ground, FP&L will schedule the wire pull and switch over power lines. The AT&T fiber optic issue, conduit issue, appears largely resolved again. Although AT&T stated they were fine with us pushing the conduit and exposed wire down as far as we could and putting inches of base and asphalt on top of it, I am not comfortable with having a $4.5 million project with a real pretty parking lot and concrete walkways only to have AT&T come in possibly months later to tear it all up in sections to run a conduit line. Therefore, I have asked the contractor for a cost proposal to install a conduit line per AT&T specs when they are trying to work the existing line down a little bit. AT&T is happy with this course of action because come the day something goes wrong with their line, instead of directional boring and potholing throughout the parking lot to verify where new subsurface infrastructure is. They will simply pull through the new conduit. I put this akin to the old Fram oil filter. You can pay me now or pay me later. And my daddy always said, pay me now. As I mentioned, the base of the pickleball tennis courts is being compacted. Final drainage work on the multipurpose athletic field is underway. Upcoming work in the next few weeks is fence installation, finishing hydro seeding and retention ponds, sewer and water line extensions, and installation of the athletic field subsurface material. Baffle box project update. The baffle box was delivered today. I got a very nice thank you from the contractor for the assistance police and public works provided in managing the traffic. At one point, we had 3 semi-trucks in the vicinity of Cheyenne Court and Yacht Club Boulevard, and there was no fender benders around. Everybody slowed down. The first pay app has been submitted, approximately $400,000, and they are 3 weeks ahead of schedule. If only all our contractors were like them. Muck project update. After discussing pros and cons, Satellite Beach City Manager and I have agreed to split the 2 muck projects and the permitting to have a cleaner audit trail and dealing with the permitting agencies. We are still going to coordinate our efforts, but we both believe that this is a better course of action. Specifically, there's a shared $1 million state appropriations that if we don't split things out, Satellite Beach would get a check for $1 million and then turn around and cut us a check for $500,000, and both auditors would question why is a check going between the cities for $500,000. We submitted paperwork last week for the Army Corps of Engineers permit transfer, and we will be submitting paperwork this week for the DEP permit transfer. Due to the aforementioned planning and zoning voting issue, the P2 zoning ordinance will be sent back to planning and zoning for their June 3rd meeting, and it'll be on the first meeting in June for City Council's consideration of first reading. Legislative session, the legislature's back in working on the budget, anticipate a budget by May 29th. As of now, our state appropriations request is tentatively funded for 50%. It still has to be agreed upon both houses and survive the governor's line item veto pin. Legislative tracker is attached. We received one email this week. It was a direct message on Facebook that Assistant to the Manager Covert received from a resident on Christie Drive, complimenting the city for being proactive in stormwater and Indian River Lagoon health of installing the baffle box outside of City Hall. She ended her message that IHB is very well run. Upcoming agenda items are public hearing and second readings on the subdivision plat. The Watercraft has been kicked to P&Z. Reasonable accommodation, certified recovery residents, public hearing, second reading. And the piggyback contract for the engineering services related to muck removal project and disposal of fixed assets. And that concludes my report, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Item 8B is the city attorney's report.
Nothing really to report on, just a reminder, on the 20th, we do have special magistrate hearing in front of our special magistrate for a couple of code violations, so we'll have a quasi-judicial hearing on that day.
Okay,
Okay, that's all I have.
all right, thank you. Item 8C is council comments. We'll start with our deputy mayor.
Nothing too much. Just attended the Space Coast League of Cities meeting last night. It was hosted by Indian Atlantic and Melbourne Beach. It's always a good opportunity to meet with surrounding cities and network and discuss the same issues that we're all dealing with, and learn from each other.
Okay. Councilman Romy.
Just want to mention that some neighbors and residents have been complimenting how waste management is running now, where large amounts of yard waste are automatically picked up instead of having to call. And, I mentioned this to John Coffey, and he said he's heard also that we're sort of the envy of the county, that no one has to call, it's just automatic. So I'm really grateful that contract worked out. That's it.
Yep. Councilmember Yorio.
Yeah, I'd like to share something, a personal experience I had with our city public safety component. So on Saturday afternoon, this past weekend, there was a down power line in my yard. And I called FPL and reported it. It's a live wire that was feeding the street light on the corner of my lot. FPL did not respond, and I called them again the following morning. So I live at the entrance of the Algonquin Sports Complex, so there's a lot of people, a lot of traffic that come, and foot traffic, kids playing that come in and out of that ball field. So I reported it again on Sunday morning, and very quickly FPL had called the police department. Officer Barberi, who's with us tonight, and Officer Dennis showed up, met me on site, and we were able to safe the situation. And then soon after that, our fire department showed up to again safe the situation and prevent anybody from approaching this live wire until FPL came and safed the situation. So I wanted to recognize Tony Coleman and Ken Bowman, from our fire department, for responding to that, and also Officer Barberi and Officer Dennis for showing up and safing the situation. So thank you, gentlemen.
Very good.
That's it.
All right. Councilmember Nutt.
High school, if they want to help guide our future with our children.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I was not able to attend the Space Coast League of Cities, so I don't have anything to report on for that. So we'll move along to item 8D, public comments, and this is for non-public hearing agenda items only. I have two speaker cards that fit that bill. One is, I will probably not get your name quite right, but Jovita Olive. Do you want to come up and speak? Yes, it's going to come up. Since that item is not a public hearing item, that's when the public comment is for that item, as well as there's somebody who wants to talk about the Timpoochee house. You can get your comments in now, and then we'll discuss it amongst council. No, decision has not been made on that yet. So that's, if you want to speak to that item, you could come up now and do so. Yeah, that was dismissed as far as by council. That was the original recommendations of the traffic engineering study that was made. We dismissed that. Nobody really felt comfortable with doing that. So that was dismissed. We asked them to go back and look at the signage side of things, just from the yield, which street should yield to which street on the eastbound approaches to the intersection. And that's what the study was amended to discuss that. And that's what we'll be talking about tonight. So your opportunity is to speak now if you want to speak now, because we may well make a decision tonight on changing signage. Yes. It's okay. We're not scary. We'll just come on up here and come up, state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name's Jovita Olive. I'm at 1103 Pine Tree Drive. I spoke last month. Y'all remember me being here. Because of the original proposal was to put a stop sign like right at the end of my driveway. So I was totally against that. And several of my neighbors were here, stated that maybe a stop sign that was originally there be put back on the Banana River side. Someone told me maybe a blinking yellow light might be something. But these are just options maybe that you would consider when you discuss this. But I hope it's a workable solution for everyone that doesn't impact the city with a lot of maybe unnecessary expenses for something that hasn't really impacted the area. We've had, like I said in last month's meeting, 2 accidents in the original report, which were further down the road and didn't involve the crossover at Pine Tree and Banana River Drive. So please consider all of those factors when you make your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and the other card I have under this public comment section is Janet Tomford. And this relates to item 10E, which is the 210 Timpoochee Drive lien forgiveness request.
Janet Tomford, 212 Timpoochee Drive. I guess I'm here to say I'm happy that someone's going to finally buy the house next to us that's been abandoned. And I've met the prospective buyer, John, and he's trying to get some liens removed or lowered so he can purchase the property. And then he guaranteed us that he's going to live there for 5 years at least and not build a 2-story home. Right? Okay. So I guess, yeah, just asking to lower the liens
Okay,
on the place.
all right.
The 5-year. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. Yes, that's not an agenda item. So there's another public comment section at the end. I will not forget you. Promise. Ah, I know. I forgot. I literally have forgotten him twice from prior meetings. I don't know. All right, so moving along to, let's see, item 9A, should be Pine Tree Drive and Banana River Drive traffic study findings. City Manager Coffey?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. No need to summarize this. We've talked about before. We sent back and asked the traffic engineer to re-examine. They came back with 2 proposals that is in the agenda packet, and I forwarded separately. One was similar elements that you rejected at the March 24th City Council. The second one was more in line of your request about the eastbound traffic on Banana River Drive should no longer yield to eastbound traffic on Pine Tree. Instead, Pine Tree Drive traffic should yield to Banana River Drive, and they had some signage recommendations. Staff request direction on this matter.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I did go through and read the amended traffic study. Interestingly, it confirmed what I felt was the situation, that the eastbound Banana River Drive was the dominant road in terms of traffic volumes. But when you look at their recommendations, and it confirms that, it says Banana River Drive carries higher traffic volumes than Pine Tree Drive West. That said, Pine Tree Drive West does not provide sufficient sight distance for drivers to safely yield to eastbound Banana River Drive traffic, whereas Banana River Drive does provide adequate sight distance under the current roadway alignment. That's a little surprising to me. I find it much harder to see vehicles from the Banana River Drive eastbound movement looking over towards Pine Tree than I do eastbound Pine Tree looking over towards Banana River. But that's what their conclusion is.
I don't
on
believe
this.
it.
And I'm very surprised at that. If that is in fact the case, then, you know, I'm certainly not going to go against a traffic study that states that the sight distance is inadequate. But I'm having a hard time believing that that's the case. I don't know how council feels about this, but, and if it is in fact the case, if they can show us that, you know, detailed information to show us that that's it, then, you know, I would go along with their statement, their recommendation, which is to not do that.
Mayor, they were a little overzealous in their first recommendation as far as I was concerned.
Yeah, I would not support that.
And I think so it doesn't mean we don't have to support them at all, as far as I'm concerned. We can do what we want. I guess what I'm trying to get at is, it was a simple ask, and we took it to put it in a study, just to switch the yields. That's it. We all recognize the issue. For them, I think they're using the previous study for the data that they're collecting now, because what they're recommending makes absolutely no sense. Because I'm in agreement, as much as you are, that the yielding needs to be swapped, period. And I think the council can actually do that. We can make that recommendation and just do it. And I would prefer that we kind of put this to rest, because it is a burden, I think, on a lot of people, especially our elders, when they're having to yield and look off to their passenger side in order to yield to somebody,
Right.
instead of just yielding to the oncoming traffic, which is normal in almost every traffic situation, to yield to your left of oncoming traffic, as if you're coming to a crossroads. So I would like to see us make a motion or make some type of adjustment that we can.
Quick question for Carl on this. Well, maybe it's not a quick question, but do we run any risk or liability risk if we did go in the direction of making that change when they are clearly stating that there is inadequate sight distance?
Well,
That put us in a bad position potentially.
so there's sovereign immunity for the council's planning level decision. Decision to do something is protected under sovereign immunity. The operational part, i.e. the maintenance part, if the signs fall down, you don't maintain them and something happens, then we're liable. So, you know, from the perspective of, you know, consider a traffic light. You know, if a traffic study said we need to put up a traffic light and we don't do it, we're not liable. That's the planning level decision. If we put up the traffic light and we don't maintain it and somebody gets hurt, then there's liability. So from the planning perspective, I think we can pretty much do what we want to do.
Okay. All right. That answers my
I have a comment. So the study provided two options. Option one is, I think, generally what you just described in the description in the beginning of the report. But option two, I believe, is switching the yield signs. It says.
Well, it is.
So it says they prefer option one, but it doesn't negate or eliminate option two for consideration.
Understood. And it does, you know, it's presenting the two options. And I think it's presenting the second option because it was at our request to do so. And then the paragraph that follows is where it gets into the nuts and bolts of the traffic volumes and then the sight distance issues. So that's what I'm reading, and I picked up on that, and seems odd to me. It doesn't seem to make sense to me, but it's there, so.
Mayor?
Are-
I'm sorry, go on, Susan, please.
Councilmember Rowan.
I was just going to ask, I mean, I think Carl answered it, but are we obligated to do anything only because I keep going back to Sergeant Barberi saying for 35 years, nothing has happened. There hasn't been an accident there for 35 years. And I know you had said we planned for what could happen, but I think we also have to look at what has happened for 35 years, which is nothing.
Understand. I mean, yeah, we can not make any decision. We can leave it alone. That's another option, of course.
And I agree. I think we're not, from what the attorney said, we're not liable by this study. So, you know, the option to do nothing couldn't be used against us either as a city. So, I mean, I at this point, it's definitely convoluted, but I would say, you know, leave it the same. No changes.
Mayor, didn't the study, it also stated that the eastbound Riverside was the dominant as far as traffic?
Eastbound Banana River is the dominant traffic.
So why would you not allow Pine Tree to be the one that would yield to that side? It only makes sense. In fact, it's more of a safety guard on our behalf to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it says, you know, the first sentence in there says, it references the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, indicates that right-of-way should be assigned to the approach with the higher traffic volumes and better geometric continuity. So it's saying it should be assigned, so they're saying it should be assigned, but there's a sight distance thing that they're grabbing onto.
So it's conflicting itself, even the report. So
Yeah.
There's two criteria, is what they're saying, is one is based on volume, should be assigned to the higher volume, which is Banana River. That is kind of like, however, there's the sight distance considerations for both approaches, and Banana River one.
I think that we're taking the recommendation for the Banana River being the dominant lane street. And the site that you're referring to, the distance, we've come to that conclusion that we think it's better already. We don't have to take their recommendation on that. I think it's ridiculous that they're even saying it because it's such an obvious change that needs to be done. And the thing is that this current, the way it is currently, it's only been that way since the last, didn't this change as far as the yield, who yielded to who? Instead of having the stop sign there from the last time they redone and paved the road?
No, there was some restriping that was done and some additional signage posted, some clarifying signage.
Correct. Before, there was actually nothing, so people just, still nothing happened, and
Right.
there wasn't the signage that's there now. Now there's confusion, and we may, like the deputy mayor said, maybe adding to the confusion if we do something again.
Okay.
So,
So, as it stands right now, we have, I think we've been in agreement on the option one as presented in the traffic study with all the, you know, changes and road realignment and all that. That nobody wants to do that. We've already made that statement, and we voted on that before. So we have option two, which is to switch the yield signs essentially for the eastbound approaches, or we have do nothing. So at this point, I would entertain a motion from somebody.
I would like to make a motion for option 3 to keep it the same, the way it is.
Second.
I have a motion by Deputy Mayor Dyer, a second by Councilmember Romy. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Aye. Did you vote?
aye.
Okay. All right. All right.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we swap the yield signs on Banana River and Pine Tree.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion by Councilmember Nutt, second by Councilmember Yorio. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion Motion carries 3-2 to switch the yield signs. All right, 3, 2.
Not them, us.
Clarification on that.
Yes.
We're not adopting their switch request. That's a recommendation. It's what Mr. described about switching yield signs.
Well,
Correct?
actually, option 2 is.
It's option 2.
It is option 2.
It is?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
below option 2, they describe the
Okay.
volumes and all that.
All right, just want to make sure
So,
that
yes.
the record's clear as what we're doing
Yep.
here. All right, thank you.
Yep, it's option 2 because it talks about switching the signage and then the advanced signage, where it should be placed and all that. Okay? All right, so item 10A, we already have discussed that and we've moved that to after the next P&Z board meeting. So we'll go on to item 10B, which is ordinance number 2026-05, Administrative Platting Code Amendment, first reading. Vicki?
Okay. Ordinance number 2026-05, an ordinance of the City of Indian Harbor Beach, Brevard County, Florida, relating to land development, amending subsection 3 of Article 17 of Appendix A of the Code of Ordinances of the city relating authority and duties of the Planning and Zoning Board, amending Chapter 100, definitions of Appendix B of the Code of Ordinances, adding a definition of administrative authority and administrative official, amending the definition of development plan, final plat, preliminary plat, and subdivision, amending Section 103-2 subdivision plat approval as a prerequisite for issuance of building permit, amending Section 103-3 preliminary plat approval, amending Section 103-4 renaming said section subdivision construction plan approval, providing for requirements for submittal of subdivision construction plans, providing for a submittal and review process of subdivision construction plans, amending Section 103-5, final plat approval, amending Section 103-06, recording of final plat, deletion of Section 103-7 in its entirety, change and approved plat, providing for conflict, severability, incorporation, and an effective date.
All right, thank you. Kelly, take it away.
Hello, thank you. Good evening. Kelly Delmonico, planning consultant on behalf of the city. Tonight I have 2 items that I'm bringing in front of you, both started from a 2025 legislative session. And so we'll bring these 2 together with separately with separate votes. This first one is about administrative platting code amendment. So Senate Bill 784 was signed into law on June 20th, 2025. Beginning July 1st, 2025, the state said, and they mandated that local governments implement an administrative approval process for plats and replats that are ready for recording. So the intent of the legislation is to streamline the process for code-compliant plats by removing the requirement for public hearings. So what we have done is we've gone through our existing code and done a strike-through underline to be consistent with Florida statutes. So to summarize these very vaguely, and we can get into more detail if you'd like to, is to clarify that preliminary plats remain subject to review by the Planning and Zoning Board and City Council. Final plats will be administratively reviewed and determined. It adds in definitions for new terms in the amendment. It sets forth submittal, review, and approval processes for the preliminary and the final plat process. It revises some of the existing subdivision regulations related to utility and drainage easements and right-of-way width. And it also clarifies the process for subdivision construction plan approval and timing with the preliminary plat and the final plat. We do plan on returning to at some point in the future, probably after we get to the 2026 legislative requirements, but we will return with some more detailed proposed text amendments regarding submittal requirements and technical regulations of the plats. But this ordinance is intended to efficiently comply with the intent of state law. The proposed code amendment is consistent and compatible with the adopted comp plan and aligns with the goals, objectives, and policies of the city, as well as with Florida statutes. So you'll see in the staff report that I have a table in there about how it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. And we ask that you consider recommending approval of Ordinance 2026-05 to comply with state law.
Okay, thank you. Council, Deputy Mayor Dyer, any questions for Kelly or?
No questions?
Okay.
No questions, thank you.
No questions.
Councilmember Nutt? And I do not have any questions either. Thank you.
Like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 2026-05 on first reading?
Second.
I have a motion by Deputy Mayor Dyer, second by Councilmember Romey. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. And item 10C, ordinance number 2026-08, reasonable accommodation and recovery residences code amendment. This is a first reading. So, Nikki?
Ordinance number 2026-08, an ordinance of the City of Indian Harbor Beach, Brevard County, Florida, establishing Article 28 Supplementary District Regulations of Appendix A of the Code of Ordinances of the City relating to reasonable accommodations to the city's zoning code, providing for intent and application process review and a review process, providing for findings made by the city manager in regards to an application for a reasonable accommodation, providing for the duration of a reasonable accommodation and other general provisions, establishing Article 29 Supplementary District Regulations of Appendix A of the Code of Ordinances of the City relating to reasonable accommodations for certified recovery residences under the city's Land Development Code, providing for intent and application process review and a review process, providing for findings made by the city manager in regards to an application for a reasonable accommodation, providing for the duration of a reasonable accommodation and other general provisions, providing for conflict, severability, incorporation, and an effective date.
Okay, thank you.
All right, round two. So this ordinance is reasonable accommodation and recovery residences. Another ordinance to comply with Florida statutes. So a reasonable accommodation allows individuals with disabilities as defined by the Americans with Disability Act and Fair Housing Amendments Act to request changes to land use or zoning rules. And as we talk through this, if you want some examples, I can kind of throw some at you to maybe shine some light on this. So this ordinance adds 2 new articles to the zoning code. The first is Article 28, which is related to reasonable accommodation in general. And that language outlines the process for individuals with disabilities to apply for reasonable accommodation, ensuring they have equal access to housing by modifying specific city requirements when appropriate. And I'll just give a couple examples here. So one case that I know about is, a local government might require there to be a garage, an enclosed garage at a house, but someone might claim reasonable accommodation because they have a disabled child or adult that's living with them that needs lifts and it doesn't work with how the house is laid out. So the local government can grant them the ability to enclose the garage and use it as a living space as long as that person with the disabilities is living in that area. So again, there are ways to kind of claw back some of this stuff. Or for example, if you have somebody that has disabilities that might be an eloper, you might apply for a reasonable accommodation for an 8-foot fence in your rear yard rather than the maximum of a 6-foot fence. It sets forth an administrative process for that. As far as I know, that's never happened in Indian Harbor Beach, but this sets everything up so it can be reviewed internally by staff and, the attorney and consult with whoever they need to for the city manager to make a determination. The second article, Article 29, is the proposed reasonable accommodation certified recovery residences language, which is a result from the new 2025 state law, which is very clear about what they want people to add into their code. So some of the key components of that law is that a local government must include a process for requesting reasonable accommodation from any local land use regulation for recovery residences. And this is also related to a disability. So a recovery residence is a residential dwelling unit or other form of group housing which is offered as a residence that provides a peer-supported, alcohol-free, and drug-free living environment. So it's important to realize that drug addiction and alcohol addiction are also disabilities under the law. Quiet like a mouse.
I'm not sneaking up on anybody.
And a certified recovery residence is what we're talking about, the protections of and accommodating for, is a recovery residence that holds a valid certificate of compliance and is actively managed by a certified recovery residence administrator. So we have to be consistent with the Fair Housing Amendments Act and the ADA and now this Florida statutes that requires us to put this language in there. The city does not currently identify regulations and standards for a recovery residence, or for that matter, like a group home or a sober living home. So this kind of helps us funnel things into the appropriate category for when they come in. The proposed reasonable accommodation process will be in place to address certified recovery residents that may request relief from land use regulations such as zoning, setbacks, parking, etc. The proposed code amendment is consistent and compatible with the adopted comprehensive plan and aligns with the goals, objectives, and policies of the city as well as with Florida statutes. And I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, thank you. Anyone on council have any questions?
One quick question. The recovery residents that you mentioned, so, I mean, I know we have some here, so they have to comply with all this to be acknowledged as that.
Well, so kind of an example here is the city has a definition for family, and this is the thing I can think of from our code is, can't remember the exact language, but it's like no more than 4 unrelated people may live together. So somebody that wants to set up a certified recovery residence could ask through this process for an accommodation to be able to set up that certified sober living environment where there's more than 4 unrelated people living together. Yes.
Thanks. On the halfway houses, are we allowed to put in a limit of personnel that could be in that particular house?
So the term halfway house
recovery.
is really not a term used in the statutes. It would blow your mind if you would read the Florida laws on I'm just going to generically call them all group homes.
Correct.
I mean, there's so many different aspects of it, and in some instances, the legislature has said they're allowed in residential districts. You can't control them at all, okay? And this is another one of those situations. So to answer your question, probably not. We probably can't regulate what you were specifically asking about.
As far as how many people can be in a 1,200 square foot home?
If it meets fire code, and the statute authorizes them to ask for that accommodation, we gotta let them in.
Now, if we have current ones that aren't currently, well, once this is passed, if it passes, can we make them comply with this?
Well,
Meaning, I mean, they're gonna have to ask for reasonable accommodations if they haven't got it already.
I don't know that we have any.
I'm not aware of any
Yeah,
certified
but
it's
if-
how you
if-
define them. It's
Correct. It's
kind of
very-
unclear what you're asking.
All right,
Yeah,
I think we do. They're just right on the radar.
but then again, if it depends on what type of thing it is. Because there are specific things, whether you call it a group home or an adult recovery home, whatever you want to call it, there are ones that specifically say they are allowed in the residential district.
That's
And-
fine.
And if, as long as I suppose if they're meeting whatever fire codes and fire requirements there may be for that type of facility, I think they're allowed. I mean, we all deal with it. I've dealt with it in Malabar, and Malabar has come up with a comprehensive list of the types of homes.
So again,
or-
if we identify one that has not, that made themselves known to us, and we've identified one, and they're legitimate, and they're a charitable organization that does this as a business, are we allowed to approach them and make them apply for this reasonable accommodation?
If they are in violation of our code, again, it depends on what they're violating. You know, it's hard to answer that question if you, without a specific. If you're saying they're overloaded with people?
No, I'm saying that they're not violating anything, but they're asking for reasonable accommodations for being a charitable organization, for ADA requirements, for anybody that may be there. And it may be a little bit more than the number of residents that would be in a normal house here, I guess.
They have to ask us for the reasonable accommodation. We don't go ask them
Understood.
to get one.
All right. Thank you, Mayor.
Anybody else? Neil?
Yeah, I think, I guess this is just a clarification question, probably along the lines that Councilmember Nutt asked, but what we're being asked to do is consider approving on first reading to comply with applicable law and adopt language that allows a process. So that's what we're actually considering, to create a process for this to happen. It's not necessarily to create any regulations or anything like that around the existing law.
No.
So the way I read it is it's essentially, you know, there's not a lot we can do except for creating a process that complies with the law.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's good sum.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I would entertain a motion.
Have to approve it, guys.
I make a motion to approve ordinance number 2026-08 on first reading.
A motion by Councilmember Romey, second by Councilmember Nutt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 5-0. Okay, item 10D, Fourth Amendment to the Brevard County Stormwater Education and Outreach Interlocal Agreement. City Manager Coffey.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. In 2011, Brevard County and City of Indian Harbor Beach and other municipalities entered into an interlocal agreement for the funding and provision of stormwater education and outreach efforts. Previous amendments have addressed program elements and the fee structure. This amendment is at the request of City of Satellite Beach to join the program. Being a signature of the interlocal agreement, we need to approve it to allow them to participate. Staff recommends approval.
Okay, thank you. So Satellite Beach decided not to be part of it. Were they part of it once before? You said it says rejoin.
Yeah, my understanding, they originally were, and then they dropped out. Now they want to get back in.
Fair enough. All right. Anybody have any comments on council for this one? No? Okay, I'd entertain a motion then.
Make a motion to authorize the city manager to execute the interlocal agreement amendment on behalf of the city.
Second.
I have a motion by Deputy Mayor Dyer, second by Councilmember Romey. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Item 10E, 210 Timpoochee Drive lien forgiveness request. City Manager Coffey.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Since 2017, there's been 3 special magistrate hearings resulting in daily fines being levied against the current owner of 210 Timpoochee Drive. The current payoff of the 3 cases is approximately $1.1 million. An applicant for the lien request is a prospective buyer of the property, which is in a considerable state of disregard, if you want to say. If you drive by Timpoochee, you know which house it is without having to look for the street address. Problematic is, once the property is brought into compliance in each of the 3 cases, the liens should have stopped accruing. However, for unknown reasons, that did not happen. So the majority of the liens should never been affixed to the property. I attached a letter from the applicant stating his intent to live there and not to rent it out for at least 5 years. As y'all know, and folks in the audience watching at home, the purpose of the city's code enforcement is compliance and upholding community property values, not revenue generation. Therefore, staff recommends City Council release all liens except the $2,135.51 in hard costs, subject to a successful closing on the purchase of the property.
Okay, thank you.
If I might add, these liens, the 3 liens were for lawn mowing, the condition of the lawn. They weren't for the condition of the home. We never had any code enforcement on that. So these are $1 million liens for lack of mowing. We went out there and mowed, okay? So that should have stopped because it came into compliance at that point, but we just never accounted for it and never fixed the accrual. So these hard costs would include any additional fees and costs we may have to draft the release of lien and record it, okay? So that all that is covered in that $2,100. Includes the costs we expended in the magistrate hearings and you know, certified mail and all that stuff.
Okay. All right, thank you. Yeah, I mean, based on what I'm seeing, I would be in favor of this forgiveness request for Mr. Liu. He's given assurance he's going to be living there for a minimum of 5 years. It's, you know, as the city manager, as you've stated, I should say, it's, we're trying to get compliance to happen, and that's the ultimate goal. And I think this is a fair request. Anybody else on council?
Yeah, I would agree as well. It's, you know, it'd be nice to see that property go towards, you know, some use and a permanent resident there. I think I stated last time we spoke about this, it's been in disarray since 2010 that we looked for a house in this neighborhood. So the ultimate goal would be compliance, and, you know, that would make sense to cover the costs. So I would.
Definitely support this. I mean, it's about compliance, not punishment. And I think it would make the neighborhood safer in all regards. So definitely support bringing down the lien to the hard costs.
I would agree with that too, and I appreciate the fact that Mr. Liu has included in his letter, his request, that he is going to make a covenant to live in the house for at least 5 years or longer. So no Airbnb. So that's one thing that I really appreciate you included as part of your request. Thank you, Mr. Liu.
So what'll happen is if there's a successful closing, upon receipt of the 2,100 and change, we release the liens. Just, that's how that will work.
Okay. All right, I entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to release all liens except the $2,135.51 in hard costs, subject to successful closing on the purchase of the property, as the attorney stated.
Second.
A motion by Deputy Mayor Dyer, second by Councilmember Yorio. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Item 10F, Algonquin Sports Complex pedestrian and bicycle access update. City Manager Coffey.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. FY26 budget contains funding for 2 pedestrian bicyclist access points in the northeast and northwest corners. Preliminary designs were received, and before we proceeded further, the northeast corner and the northwest corner are different type of projects. I wanted to make sure y'all were comfortable with it. There's been some updated information on the northeast corner, so I will go to that map first. This is what I included in the agenda packet, and realized today there was a miscommunication over where the ending point was. this design, a straight shot is possible if the fence area right in here is shaved down 2 feet. When I received the original proposal, I was under the assumption, the way I read it, that this area had to be shaved down 2 feet, which would have majorly impacted the drainage for this area here. I believe that this is possible now, which is a much lesser cost than what's included in your agenda packet. So if it's the consensus of the council, we will proceed to finalize the design and seek bids on this. We would do this project as the expansion project is finishing up. So there might be a few weeks where the project's finished and this is not done. We want to keep the permits very separate. The Northwest connector is a slightly different story. This is where we initially approached City of Satellite Beach about building a sidewalk across their property to get into the northwest corner of Algonquin to help get people off of Algonquin. I've shared this with City of Satellite Beach, and their staff and manager approve of us proceeding. If we were to proceed, we'd need an interlocal agreement to construct this part on their property. This line right here is the private property of the adjacent homeowner to Satellite Beach's property. What is uncertain at this point is we would need to acquire an easement on the back of this person's property to make the north-south connector into the parking lot. I have not approached the homeowner on this yet because I wanted to make sure y'all were comfortable with this design. I can't publicly talk about what that cost would be, but if the homeowner was tentatively in an agreement, Mr. Bone would help me come up with an easement that we would bring back for your approval. So we're not going to go out and strike a deal and write a check for this access without your approval. But this is a proposed, I'll go back to the agenda item that talks about the cost. As I say, the northeast corner is less than what's in here now. The northwest corner is higher than anticipated, minus not including the cost to acquire that easement. We do have some flexibility in our budget to cover the acquisition of the easement and the projected overage of the budget. But once again, I need your direction before I proceed on this.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, regarding the northeast ramping area, the straight shot design is definitely more efficient. The other one, the one that's in the agenda packet, is it's a series of switchback ramping, and it requires way more handrail, way more ramping, and retaining walls, which isn't even addressed in this. So this is much more efficient and less costly than that. So I'm all for that. What you're showing on the screen right now as the northeast corner design. And then as far as the northwest portion goes, yes, I'm in favor of you pursuing an easement from that property owner. I think it's the right thing to do to get this done.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. When I first originally saw the design of that switchback, I had to walk away for a little bit because that made absolutely no sense to me. So I'm glad that was we were able to clear that up. That straight shot makes much more sense, and obviously it's more cost effective. I believe I originally proposed both of these sidewalk accesses, one for connectivity for the parks and to connect the two cities. And then the biggest issue would be to try to get the parade, and I love it, but the parade of kids riding bikes on Wimico to and from school. You can go by that neighborhood at, was it 3:30, and you could see it's like there's like a wall of them. So I think it needs to happen, and I would hope the resident would understand. So I'm in favor of both of these.
Okay, Councilman Romy?
I'm also in favor. It just makes a lot of sense when you're looking at it. Thank you.
Okay, Councilman Riorio?
I guess another clarification question. If this is according to this map, is the pathway going to be on the existing easement, or how do we, or explain to me why we need to get an easement?
This heavy black line is the property owner's
Right,
property.
right.
So this is their back property line. So we can't go in and construct a pathway on private property. We would basically ask them for like a conveyance easement.
So
That's the right
to the
term.
right of where his cursor is there, that's a concrete head wall.
Right.
To the right of it there, there's just insufficient room between there and our property line or the common property, his rear property line, our common parcel line. There's not enough room to do that, and yeah, it's,
Yeah, the other thing, if you look at the distance between their property corner and that wall there, it's less than half the width of the proposed pathway.
So the proposed pathway will not be on his property at all, according to or how I'm looking at this drawing. Is that correct?
No, this corner, this line here is his back
Oh, that's
property.
okay. I was looking at the
Yeah.
other line. I'm sorry.
So we'd be requesting an easement of this
Okay.
pathway.
Now I get it.
all right.
Doesn't appear that they are actively using that part of their backyard, but I won't know the person's interest until I talk to them.
Okay, thank you. I guess I confused the line, so
Sure.
thank you.
Councilman Burnett?
I'm all for it, but I don't think the northwest side's gonna cut it when it comes to asking for the easement of wanting that kind of traffic going behind your house. So I'm hoping that you're a good salesman.
Well, after looking at this drawing too, and I think John is probably a fantastic salesman. However, could we also consider where the head wall is, where that culvert comes underneath? Could we build a bridge in front of that, and then it's off the person's property, and use the bridge to cross over that area where the head wall is? Could we consider that?
We didn't consider because I'm not an engineer. I don't play one on TV, but building a bridge costs a lot more than a concrete pathway.
Yeah.
It might be less than buying an easement too.
I aim to drive a mean bargain.
Yeah, and I think we, pursue the easement, let's see how it goes. And if the property owner's amenable to it, then great. We work that out with them. If not, we have to look at another option for trying to get something through there. And yeah, that gets into a lot of, whether it's a bridge or whether it's extending the culvert and the head wall further to the east. Yeah, that's doable. It's certainly engineerable and buildable, but it is very expensive to do that.
That's where I'm trying to figure out where the cost is gonna come, because getting that easement, they're gonna want money, if I'm not mistaken. And
They may or may not,
property is
right?
kind of premium
Yeah,
right
they
now.
may-
We don't know if they're
It
going to.
depends.
All right.
He just has to have the conversation.
All right.
If the person's interested in granting that easement, then John can negotiate.
Should we ask for at least an estimate of what it would be that we would allow him to negotiate for or something, or?
I would encourage no, because
Yes, thank you. All right.
if you say a number, I'm going to get countered double that.
Yeah.
I think we start with a conversation.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's all right, no, we're good. Okay,
Is this consensus or
that's
action?
consensus. So consensus that our city manager goes and discusses with the property owner the easement for the sidewalk construction.
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, good. Good. All right, item 10G, development of a policy regarding council member participation at advisory board meetings. City Manager Coffey.
Deputy Mayor Dyer requested this. I'd like to defer my time to him.
Yes. So I recently met with some of the members of the advisory board, individually, and just kind of asked, since one of the advisory boards was newer, said how do they think it was going? Is there anything that the city could, assist them with to help them be more effective and be a better board? And it came to my attention that they said that there's council members that frequently attend, but also, speak at the meetings. And I've been thinking about that, and I just think that creates a conflict of interest when a council member has every opportunity to discuss these issues on the dais as we do. And I definitely appreciate the back and forth and the conversation and the differencing of opinions. But also, when you are elected on council, it just comes with, a different standard. It's like you're always a council member. When I'm a coach, when I'm coaching my kids' baseball team, I'm still representing the city. I'm still the deputy mayor. And I think that when council members show up these advisory boards, and the intent of an advisory board, in my opinion, is to get unbiased opinions on these subjects that we deem subject matter experts. And when you have a council member giving their input, in my opinion, it's going to make them feel conflicted and feel differently when the council member is speaking as opposed to a regular citizen. I think it undermines the intent of the advisory board. And it's definitely different when, you look at the meetings and certain members get 3 minutes, public gets 3 minutes to speak. They get 3 minutes to speak, and then that council member comes up and they end up speaking for 6 minutes. They don't get cut off. So I don't know. Do they miss the time, or do they get added benefit because they are a council member? And ultimately, the council appoints these members to these boards. So I think it creates a conflict of interest, and I would like to not. I would also, open this up for debate, and then also have the attorney have his input as well. But I think that we shouldn't, as council members, be speaking at these advisory boards and giving your inputs on what they recommend that comes back to the council for vote. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's appropriate.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to immediately punt to our city attorney to talk about the item a little bit. We need some.
Prior,
Okay, that's fine.
are you familiar with Satellite Beach and how members of their council actually are advisory members of those boards? They're not voting members, but they're advisory members. John, are you familiar with that? Because I had that kind of discussion with some council members last night.
Not with the satellite. My last place of employment, elected officials were appointed as voting members on advisory boards. It was very unorthodox. It worked for them. It's not something I would advocate for other communities.
I don't advocate having a voting member, but as far as an advisory member from the council to that board is something that it works for Satellite Beach.
Liaison, possibly?
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
Okay, so, all right, so I got the ball now.
Okay. I mean, we can discuss it before, but, ultimately, you could answer a lot of questions. And
Citizenship, you're still a citizen of the community. Open to the public. Pending, I see no problem. In fact, it probably protects that person. May very well protect. Problem I see, concern I have is twofold. Let's discuss the easy one, and that's a quasi-judicial matter. P and Z is the one that's going to be hearing quasi-judicial matters that will come. Rezonings, site plan approvals, not so much plats anymore, those kinds of things. They conduct a quasi-judicial. Council member goes or for it, one way or the other. That bias rolls over. And this is circuit court case in Brevard County. IT wanted to expand. Council member named Pat Poole. Okay. Many of you probably don't know who Pat Poole was. I know Scott does. She advocated against it in front of the actually rallied the troops, and that carried over into the council meeting. The circuit court said she should have recused herself. She should not have voted on it. It tainted the vote, so they reversed, and ultimately FIT expanded those dormitories. So that's what could happen in a quasi-judicial fashion. And since then, Florida Statute 286.01, right to abstain, bias and the prejudice. It didn't used to have that. That's the easy one. Now let's talk about non-quasi-judicial matters, and those would come before the P and Z, for instance, an ordinance amendment, before the tree board, on some kind of recommendation. It's not illegal, and I don't think it rises to the level of a conflict of interest for a council member who's still a citizen to get up and present facts. And I'm being very specific by saying present facts. When you start getting into, I'll never vote on that, if you approve it, kind of colloquy between the council member and the board, some of the research I did, and it's more commentary research than anything else, suggests that the board can become intimidated, the subordinate board. And, oh my God, they appoint us, I feel like I gotta follow what this guy's saying or this lady's saying. And, those are the considerations that need to be taken into effect, or when we're talking about council members appearing before the subordinate boards. Can we do a policy? Sure. It's got to be a very carefully crafted policy so it doesn't infringe on anybody's right to speak at a public meeting, doesn't infringe on their right to freedom of association and other rights. So it can be done, but honestly, to say you can't go, that's not going to fly. I won't. I have to recommend against a policy that says council members cannot go to subordinate board meetings. Now, there are other issues involving, a council member, multiple council members appearing at the same board at that meeting. That's the sunshine law issue, and that's where you got to be extremely careful that one member gets up and says something, another member gets up and says, I agree what he just said. You start to get into that, almost that conduit, and you're treading on very thin ice when we're talking about sunshine law. But that's not really what I think Councilmember Dyer's focus is. It's the focus, just generally, can we prevent council members from going to the subordinate boards? And I believe the answer is no, we can't have that flat policy.
Well, yeah, and like just to clarify, it wasn't to not attend, not let them attend. My point was speaking to the board, because all those issues that they're speaking about are going to come back to the council. And you brought up another point. If there are multiple council members in that audience, and it just like it's towing the line, and it's putting the city at risk. And I just don't think that it's wise in the interest of the city. And like,
Yeah,
you're speaking on issues, and you're sitting next to a council member that you serve on with. And if you have a conversation, it's hard to imply that you weren't speaking on something that might come before the city.
Yeah, and I appreciate what you're saying, and, you know, again, just so we're clear, no one's saying that happened, okay? But sometimes the appearance is worse than what actually happens. And, you know, the appearance is there, and now you have to deal with it if someone raises it. But again, I still think with a very carefully crafted policy, we can address this, but I still have an issue with a broad policy says that you can be here, but you can't say nothing. You know,
I think it could be.
It's got to be carefully crafted.
I could certainly see the need for a policy, but to what you stated before, that would limit a council member's participation to presenting material facts as it relates to the item.
Yeah.
And once you start expressing your opinion, I think that's where you dip into that, especially if there's more than one council member there. I think you do start dipping into that sunshine law realm potentially, because you're expressing your opinion effectively to another council member. It's to everyone that's in the room, but it's to another council member, whoever that may be. You're expressing that opinion. You're discussing a matter that most definitely is going to end up before council. So how is that any different than having a private conversation with a council member about that same item? I just don't see the difference in the two.
Again, it depends on how that happens, because if a council member gets up and
I think there's a
says,
huge risk of it, is all I'm
says
saying.
A, B, C to the board, a lower board, and there's another council member who hears it, it takes two to violate the sunshine law. So there has to be more than just, I heard it. There has to be then a colloquy coming back that incorporates the appearance of a discussion amongst the council members, either using the board or, you know, turning around and saying something to them.
Yeah, and I can see that. It's a scenario thing. It's not like it's happened. It's simply we need to be careful with this. You could have that happen by virtue if that second council member were to get up and start, say they disagreed with that person. But now you're kind of having a conversation almost.
Sure.
It's an information, it's a two-way conversation. It may not be it's not directed at that other council member, but the information's out there. So I think it's really, if it's not a violation, it would not be a violation, it would be a very, very fine line.
And again, the policy would have to be narrow and very carefully drafted. I mean, I reached out to Morris Richardson at the county. What does the county do? They don't address it. They don't have one. I don't know if anyone else has a policy like that. I really don't know. I can't find one. I know there's commentary out there, but I never saw an adopted city policy or a county policy by any Florida municipality.
Carl, have you heard of these situations happening before in any other cities or in your experience in this job?
I have cautioned my other cities and council members on it. That's what I have done, and I've never had it rise to the level of someone making a complaint when council members are at another board's meeting. I mean, happened in Malabar, it used to happen a lot, okay? But I never heard of a complaint where, you know, there's some kind of sunshine law violation or even what one might consider intimidation towards the board. You know, people have the right to speak. And that's where, you know, we got to start from, right there.
Well, it's just a discussion item at this point, but I would be interested to know if, I know you said you haven't heard of anybody's crafting the ordinances, but yeah, it'd be, so you've definitely searched for that and have just not found
I
anything.
found commentary, you know, by people smarter than us, I guess, who give their opinions on stuff, and that's all they are is opinions. But I've not found an attorney general's opinion, an ethics opinion, dealing with it, and I certainly haven't found a written policy by any municipality.
Carl, could you perhaps write a letter to the five of us with the cautions and explaining what shouldn't be happening at an advisory, maybe what not to speak on, and maybe just that caution is enough?
That's up to y'all, what you want to do, sure. And I kind of did that with the email I gave to John. That's there. But if you, I mean, I could.
Maybe more guideline, like a specific guideline.
I did not want to get too specific
Sure.
and do anything without, you know, the authority from the council. Yes, I can.
I would be in favor of something like that, at least to.
I wanted to bring it up just to discuss and get all five of your input too, so.
Yeah, I think,
Go ahead.
No, I'm going to let him
I'm
go.
next, okay, thank you. So I don't think a policy is required, given all the technical problems with it that you've pointed out. But Carl did a great job of summarizing the concerns, the issues, and the risks. So I think that was a very good way of addressing it in terms of an educational opportunity for the board. And Susan's idea of providing something in a letter similar to what you've already created is essentially notice, right? To say, here are some risks, these are things you should look out for. And it should be included perhaps in new council members' packets, like their introductory packets, so that it's something that they have been given as a resource to consider, so that they have that available to them, as opposed to flying blind. So I think that, policy clearly is not the way to go, but a letter and the summarization of the risks that you've provided, I think, is a very appropriate way to address it.
Yeah, Councilmember Nutt.
So I agree with the deputy mayor but a policy, no. I think what we should try to do is maybe come up with a code of ethics that we can all acknowledge here on the council, that you can put together and.
Isn't there already a code of ethics?
Well, that's more pertaining to exactly what you asked for, as far as guidelines. Something that we can agree upon with those guidelines. That would be more of a code of ethics, because I don't think if a policy came into play, we're looking at First Amendment issues, and that's not something I want to do.
Well, I understand, but as far as a code of ethics, essentially a code of ethics is a policy, okay? But, you know, it may be even elevated higher than a policy.
Instead of being a policy, maybe it's considered like a consensus item, you know?
And just like, maybe the suggestion of them is just do that letter. Because there's no prohibition under Florida law against the town council creating its more restrictive code of ethics. You could do that, but I don't recommend that. I mean, because you know what happens. You know, people are going to start nitpicking and saying, well, you know, he shouldn't wear, you know, different colored socks.
Yeah, the policy itself becomes a risk.
Correct. So I'm all for it, you know, coming with a letter.
I do want to make one mention, that our P&Z board would never be intimidated by anybody, and it includes us, that much I know. But I understand this completely, and I think I'm glad it was brought up.
So that just goes back to, that's subjective, that's also an opinion, and that's what I think as a city, we have to look out for the city and reduce risk to the city. And that's just making the boards more effective and not having potential conflict or influence. So I do like the the guidance from the attorney to the council, and then also having that make its way into the new council members handbook, and also some education to the boards, the chairs of the boards, on how to, a little structure on how to run a meeting and with the Roberts rules and all that. I don't want another policy, trust me. It's crazy that we have to kind of talk about this, in my opinion, but I just think we need to address it because it needed to stop.
A point I want to make is, I told you about the FIT case and what happened there as it affected the city, but remember, some of these things could be ethical violations affecting you personally. As far as the cities, it's not affecting the city, it affects the individual council member. And if it's a sunshine law violation, assuming the state attorney's office would prosecute that, it's a criminal violation and potentially fines. So, while, there's some city ramifications, but I also have to protect the individuals here. And that's more of my concern than anything is to make sure that you guys don't step on your own feet.
Mm-hmm. All right.
I like the idea that the deputy mayor brought up about educating all the advisory boards as well. This should be a holistic training and education opportunity for us all. So that way the chairman of those particular committees and the members of those particular boards are able to be cognizant of those concerns and be able to stop them if they deem that necessary.
Sure.
I thought it was I think it was a great idea, Adam, that you brought that up, and it's a good opportunity for us all to learn from.
We'll get it done.
Okay.
We got to evaluate John.
I know.
Can I leave?
Awfully quiet tonight.
All right. Item 10H. That's city manager's annual evaluation. City Manager Coffee.
Carl's leaning away from me. I'm getting nervous. As long as he doesn't put a plastic sheet over himself. I started working here 4 years ago this Saturday. My annual my contract says I'll be evaluated each year. Y'all filled out your individual ones. I'll show the summary. However you want to proceed with this, I've took the weekend to digest your comments, and I appreciate the complimentary comments. A lot of that is because of the good staff we have here. Makes me look good, and the areas where you have pointed out that I need to work on, I will double down on. Very much enjoy being part of the IHB family and hope to continue. With that, I'll give my remaining time back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I think you've done an outstanding job across the board. I personally appreciate your deliverance of information, passing things along promptly to me, and I presume it's happening with the rest of the council members as well. Just the transparency is a big thing. Making sure that you pay attention to the members of the community when they have concerns or complaints, addressing those in a professional way. Financially, I think you've done a fantastic job organizing the city and keeping it maintained very fiscally responsible. I have nothing but good to say about your performance. Deputy Mayor Dyer.
I always say this every year. I know the numbers look a little different, but I'm military, so it's very hard to get fives when you're in the military. I see some head nods back there. They understand how it goes. So don't let the numerical score take anything away from my appreciation on how what we have for you as a city manager. I think you do a phenomenal job. You're very professional, you're thorough, you're very fiscally responsible. Very pleased with your service year after year. So, thank you.
Councilmember Romy.
Other than an obsession with chicken wings, I think John is doing a great job, a fantastic job, and certainly should see an appropriate increase. We would be lost without you. So thank you, John.
Councilmember Yorio.
Well, I can't not concur with the other comments being made. I have had the pleasure of working with John for probably longer than some of the people on this board, based on my involvement with the Tree Preservation Board prior to being a city council member. So I've had the pleasure of witnessing John's leadership, guidance, knowledge, and experience for not just the city council, but also for managing one of our advisory boards. So I have always appreciated the expertise and professionalism that John brings to both the leadership aspects of the board, of the Tree Preservation Board, as well as the city council. John is always available. He makes himself available whenever he can. He provides exceptional guidance and leadership in supporting not only the city council, the advisory boards, but the staff that he manages for the city. And so I have lived in Indian Harbor Beach my entire life, and I'm very proud to call myself a lifelong resident of the city. And part of my pride in the city is John's contribution to the leadership role that he serves. Thank you, John.
Councilmember Nutt.
I'm not going to be lengthy about this. You did a great job. I appreciate you very much. What you've done with the budget.
What most city managers were capable of actually handling. Your forecast of what's coming up when it comes to what we're potentially facing and try and prepare for that. So it means a lot to me that you're doing that for our citizens, because I'm afraid of what's to come, but you're helping prepare for the worst. And that's it. Other than just shy walking on water, you're all right.
Maybe next year's
Okay, so one of the things we need to determine here is traditionally, there is a salary increase associated with the city manager's evaluation. And there's it's not page numbered here, but it's the second page of the information in our agenda. And it's the bottom paragraph. It talks about eligible employees, all other eligible employees received a 4% increase, which was comprised of a 1% COLA and a 3% step progression increase. So we need to discuss what that increase would look like.
I'm good with the 4%.
As far as that goes, I mean, we've seen the comparative salaries, and he's right there. So I think we're in line.
Yeah, and that's typically, that's what we try to do, is mirror what the rest of staff gets. And that's where I've seen it go I think every year I've been part of this council. We may have had an adjustment.
Last year's a little different.
Yeah, a little bit different. But yeah, I'm certainly would be in favor of a 4% increase. Adam?
Agree.
Agreed.
All right. So that, this is an action item, so I need a motion.
Carl, how do I word this? Make a motion that we approve the city manager's annual evaluation for a 4% increase?
With an effective date?
So the 4%, what's the effective date would be?
So the effective date would be 5/16, May 16th.
Yeah. So I'd like to make a motion for a 4% increase in his pay effective on May 16th.
16th. Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Nutt, a second by Deputy Mayor Dyer. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, John. All right, next is public forum. I have some speaker cards up here. And first is Jerry Rinko.
Good evening. I'm Jerry Renko. I live at 506 Eleuthera Lane. Yeah, that's in Indian Harbor Beach. And if you're familiar with it, it's kind of diagonally across from Oars and Paddles Park. Lived there since 1994. And one of the people that signed the original agreement when the county was deciding to make that a park. And one of the key provisions of that was that would be a no motorized boating. And recently there's been an increase of motorized boats that have been using it. I know the rec department and the city council has taken some steps. I was hoping there might be some additional signage that would be a little bit more obvious. Currently the tikis that are operating out of Telmar Bay have stopped using the docks, but they're going right to the property line of the park. And their patrons are parking in the park, carrying their coolers down to the, you have to say it's right on the property line, and then boarding there. It seems to me that if they're operating a business out of Telmar Bay, they should operate at Telmar Bay and not out of the public park.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I had to say. Thank you all for the attention. But
Okay.
Some additional signage, because a lot of people just come in there, there's a little sign that says
Right.
no mooring.
Right,
And people go, well, I'm only going to be here for 10 minutes.
right. Okay,
Okay,
thank you very much. John, can we look at that and see what the signage is and maybe make it more specific? No motorized boats?
Well, if you put a sign in the park and the issue is people coming up the canal, I'm not sure how they see the canal. The tiki boat owner actually yesterday submitted a permit application to operate his business out of our park. I assume he's going to appeal my soon-to-be denial to you. But the issue is folks coming up the canal. So we can put a sign in the park. I'm not sure how that affects the canal
Right, I
traffic.
understand that. I know there's boat traffic that obviously is going to go up and down the canal to various homes that are there. You can't prevent that from happening. I think it's more, people tying up at Oars and Paddles. Maybe if it says no mooring, maybe it should say no motorized boat mooring or something, just a clarifier
So-
signage, maybe a little bigger.
I have a question. Can you talk about the provision for no motorized boats at the park? Is that what was stated earlier?
There is a sign in the park that's been there as long as I've been here that says launching of motorized vehicles prohibited.
Launching, yeah. There's no boat launch there, right?
That's basically what the sign says.
Yeah, that one's an interesting one to me. I don't know, if it's a canal, boats should be allowed to go into the canal. It's in the water. I don't know, but
It's more about tying up.
Yeah, that's tying up is
That's
different,
about all
but
we can regulate. I
yeah,
think.
no motorized boats in the canal at the park. I don't know. It seems like a difficult one. But definitely look into it.
Yeah.
How's it written?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's to try to just better discourage folks from tying up their boats. It's not usage of the canal. We can't,
Yeah, that's okay.
there's
That's
no real way for us to regulate that. I think it's got to be, you know.
mooring, more towards
Mooring.
mooring than motorized. Yeah.
Yep. Romy, do you have any
No,
thoughts
I
on
was
that?
just thinking, could the sign go on the dock pole or something, so when you're actually in the water, you see it instead of otherwise walking in the park?
Yeah, that would be good.
That was exactly my thought as well.
Yep.
Sign in the appropriate place.
Councilmember Nutt, thoughts?
I'm agreeing with Councilmember Roaming.
Okay. All right. Next person is Philip Connor. Come up and state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Thanks for letting me talk. I'm Philip Connor. I live at 504 Eleuthera Lane, next to Jerry. I didn't know he was coming, so a little bit of overcross here. So my questions are about parking and charging for parking. So over at the beach here, we've got a designated parking space for a low-speed vehicle. And that means if no golf carts show up that day, nobody gets to park there anyway. I see no reason to have a preference for low-speed parking vehicles. Police, I understand. Lifesavers, I understand. Handicap, I understand, but don't give them. So that's just a side point. So back to oars and paddles. Space Coast Rowing and Heart and Soul Dragon boats use that. Fabulous. Sometimes the practice music gets a little loud, but that hasn't been a problem. So those folks use the facilities well and appropriately so. There's a number of businesses that use the park for profit, and they begin with a Canadian company that has multiple people several times a day, tens of people using the facilities there, their kayaks. It's kind of interesting. You hear German accents some days and French accents, but it's a business operating out of the park. Then we have fishing guides that come up in power boats, pick up their customers, get on the boat, go fishing, come back, and they do that. The tiki huts, I didn't realize they weren't coming all the way over to the floating docks anymore, but they're doing that. They're using the parking lot, and their people are traipsing across there doing that kind of stuff. There are kayak and stand-up paddleboard guides that are taking large groups out of there. The park's supposed to close at 8. Frequently, they go out at night in the dark, a large group of people going down there doing that. So those are folks that are using the park for their income and filling up the parking lot also. So my question for you guys, the parking at the beach, the parking permit stuff, is that to discourage non-Indian Harbor Beach people using the beach so that we use in the parking lot, so that preference to Indian Harbor Beach people, or is it an income producer, or is it both? And then what does that policy look like when we apply it over here to the park, to oars and paddles? So recreational use, kayaks, stand-up paddle boards. A lot of power boats come in, dock, pick up their guests, whatever, and take them off. Other people you'll see racing up there, they're using the bathroom. So they pell-mell, they're violating the wake. We're all in oh, I know where he's going. Then there's liveaboards that come up on inflatables, usually gas motored. They come up, use the bathrooms there. And there's a lot of other people, incidentals, fishing cast nets, etc. One guy tends to bring his pickup truck down to you said they don't launch boats? They do. Drives down the walkway, offloads the aluminum boat in the engine, So those guys are doing that. Then
Thank
there's
you.
another bicycle groups will park there and take up a lot of parking.
Thank you
So
very
my
much.
Question is, what's the
Time's up.
purpose for parking fees, and how does that relate to the use of the park and businesses using the park for profit? Thank you
Okay,
very much.
thank you. All right, well, I can try to address the beach parking.
Yeah, I can
It's-
speak to that one as well.
It's really, we're charging for parking for non-residents. It is primarily to offset expenses that the city has to incur. If you think about it, for the two beach parks, we have to pay for all of the maintenance of beach parks, and I would say at least half, if not more, people that go to those two beach parks are not from Indian Harbor Beach. They could be from anywhere. I mean, anywhere in the county. We have a pretty large influx of folks that come over and try to go to the beach parks. So it is, that revenue is to offset our maintenance costs, and, rightfully so. And our city shouldn't have to bear the burden of 100% of that cost. It's not to discourage, if people want to come there, they're going to come there. Paid parking is becoming more and more of a normal thing. You don't have a whole lot left that's not paid parking anymore. I wouldn't be surprised, I haven't seen the county move towards that yet, but I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen, soon enough. Because it is an expense, it's an ongoing expense, and it's not cheap. So that's the primary reason for that. Parking regulations as it relates to Oars and Paddles Park, I'm unaware of any plan for us to move towards paid parking for Oars and Paddles Park. It's a public parking lot, so anyone who wants to come and use the Oars and Paddles Park is entitled to use those parking spaces that are there. So other than that, I mean, I don't know what else to say about it.
Just to comment on the low-speed vehicle parking, that was in an effort to generate more parking spaces at the beach, because those low-speed vehicles were taking up one of the parking spots. So the whole intent wasn't to generate revenue, was to provide more parking spots. And
those golf cart spaces, they don't take up any parking spaces.
No,
They didn't reduce it at all. We actually found a couple of spots where we could add those to the parking lot. So we didn't sacrifice any vehicle parking because of that.
so that was the intent. Yeah.
The amount of people that come in and out of there, I hope you realize that we have quite a bit of Europeans that come over here, Olympians that use our Grand Canal, and they use that as they're launching for their rows, for the crew and the road teams that they have. So, and I've had the pleasure of meeting some of them, and they're revenue generating for us because they spend money in our city. I know that much. But as far as discriminating against them because they're foreign, I really want to reassure you that they're universities, and then that usually come here, or from the French or Canadians. I can tell you that right now. And but they come in here in droves because we are known for having that Grand Canal that's perfect for their training.
And we're also known for having very nice parks. I encourage the public to come to those parks because we have some very, very nice parks.
Okay, I have one more speaker card. Well, that has an asterisk with it, but David Noble. Please come and talk to us. State your name and address. There we go. Yes, it's David Noble.
My name's Dave Noble. I live at 1206 Pine Tree, and I have a business on Tomahawk. Close off Pine Tree. They're just driving way too fast on that road, and never mind the yields. Just close off that end. I'm joking. But what I'm here for is to say kudos on what you're doing with the beach access, Millennium and Bicentennial. I'm there every day, and I love to see the improvements that you're making. Also, I'd like to have a request. I know this probably won't happen, but come the weekend, just piles and piles and piles of garbage end up in the many garbage cans up there, plus the ones that the different organizations had put there for beach trash. So come Monday morning, they're all cleaned up, but Sunday, it's a mess. So we have Memorial Day coming up, and we have 4th of July coming up, and that Monday night, it's going to be like a garbage bin down there. I don't know if you can have somebody come on Sunday mornings, if the city has somebody who works 24/7 that can do a quick cleanup around the garbage things. But kudos to Todd and his guys on Monday morning for getting it cleaned up. But that Sunday, oof, it's pretty bad. Also, I need to say, you've got some great residents here who are down there every morning picking up the trash on the beach. I know the county is responsible for that beach, but your citizens have 5 or 6 of people down there before the sun is up collecting trash. So kudos for them. And as for Oars and Paddle, you know, you got the crew teams launching their boats there, so how do you say yes to them and no to the others? Okay, I understand why. But also, somebody mentioned the liveaboards. That is a very common thing in Brevard. I'm very involved with the sailing. People come down here, anchor for a week or whatever, and they know that's an easy access to keep your dinghy tied up over in that corner right near the property line. So there is concern. I used to keep my boat back there in that canal, and yeah, there seems to be a lot of traffic, a lot of fishing back there too. So you can't stop them, but the mooring is an issue. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Thank you. So, question for you, Carl, John. So we have the speaker cards here. They're specifically identified for boat parking. Do those get included now? No. Okay. All specific. Okay. I just didn't know. I've never had this situation happen, really.
That item's been moved.
Okay, that's fine.
It's been
That's
moved.
fine.
I mean, that was under the public
Okay,
hearing.
I didn't want to make any assumptions here, and then, all right. So, at this point, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Mayor Dyer, second by Councilmember Nutt. All those in favor, signify